Hey, welcome to Mornings with the Mayor. I'm your host, Mayor Robert Dye, coming to you live from my house in Farmers Branch. This is an inside look into our personnel, our various departments in the city, and kind of now how we're also navigating the coronavirus. Over time, we'll be interviewing city staff, community partners, and special guests to discuss the inner workings of our city, how we're moving forward, and bringing forward new thoughts and ideas that might be of interest to our community. So my inaugural guest is our esteemed longtime staffer and current city manager, Charles Cox. So Charles, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. I know wanted to have maybe just a candid conversation with you that kind of talks more about what's going on in the city, especially during this time, but also potentially give people a different look about you and kind of a little more on your personality and who we are, and just kind of conversations that we actually have that I think might be of interest to a lot of community members of what some of the stuff looks like that we talk about. And so, first, I just kind of want to jump in and say, tell us a little bit about yourself for those that don't know you like I do.
Oh, excellent. Sure. Well, I've been with the city for 27 years. The vast majority of that is the city's finance director. So I'm obviously a numbers guy. The past 4 years, I've been city manager. I had the privilege of being city manager. I'm Texas born and raised, out of Austin. Went to TCU undergrad and then SMU for graduate school. And so, for the most part, the city of Farmers Branch has been my professional life.
Yeah, and it's been great, and we've been grateful to have you, especially your leadership over the last few years. In my opinion, has been tremendous. But for the last 30 years, is kind of you just referenced. You've had a certain routine most days until you jumped into the city manager role, but that has been completely upended. Especially with everything that we're doing, where we have more staff working from home and kind of trying to shelter in place. So, how has that affected you, and how do you feel that that's kind of affected your staff?
Well, it's obviously impacted staff. In many ways, it's impacted staff similar to how it's impacted our residents. I mean, we're all kind of concerned about getting the COVID virus. We're concerned about the future, concerned about our jobs, concerned about retirement, concerned about our family and our family's jobs. So those are similar concerns that I know our residents have as well. I'll tell you one of the things that's really helped in terms of staff and being able to continue to deliver services to our residents is the investment that the council has supported in the past in technology. Over the past couple of years, we've invested quite a bit of funding into making sure that we had adequate bandwidth to keep up with the computer systems of today and tomorrow, and been able to, which has enabled us to be able to work remotely. For a lot of residents, they may not realize it, but there's very few people at City Hall. Most of our employees that answer the phone, they took their phone off their desk and plugged it into their router at home, and the phone number transferred with them. And so when they interact with residents, they're at home. The resident doesn't have any idea. They're still thinking that they're dealing with somebody at City Hall. And so that technology really has been fantastic. So that's enabled all of us to really very seamlessly work remotely. We implemented a new financial system. The old one was 25 years old, and the new one put us into a paperless environment last year. So we're able to process the accounts payable and payroll from remotely, which we couldn't have done before. And then finally, meetings like this, virtual meetings, just being able to have that technology and roll it out, really rapidly. My IT staff has done a great job, and we've taken, the dollars that the council has authorized us to use to invest in technology. We've done it, and I think it was in a very strategic way, and it's paying off in dividends right now, amazingly so. So those are my thoughts on the impact of staff at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been great. I know we joked the other day that I might not have to come up to City Hall to meet with you anymore. You just jump on either a Teams meeting or a Zoom conference call, and it just makes it super seamless to not only see you but have quick conversations, especially as we're trying to socially distance. But I do appreciate And I think we're fortunate that the timing just absolutely happened to work out when we transitioned, from the previous finance and accounting system into our new one that has given us this flexibility. Because I wouldn't even want to know what that might be like if, they had to be at City Hall every day, because
Yeah.
that's the way it kind of worked.
Yeah.
It seems like it would just be super tough. And I'm grateful that we also changed over our ability to pay some of our utilities through the web portal and everything else, and made sure that we got a safer group to come in and protect us even more. And so, just commend you and your team and your leadership moving that forward. But when you think about what kind of affects you and not only your staff, but what's kind of keeping you up at night, like right now, as you're dealing not only with this, but still trying to manage the city and all the staff from afar.
Well, that's what keeps me up at night right now is are the attention to the basics, and the basics are public safety. Making sure that we're able, especially in this time, able to maintain our police and fire protection. What would keep me up at night, related to that specifically, is that we could have firefighters or police officers that get sick as well. I mean, they're dealing with a lot of people, and so it's really important for us to make sure that, or for me to make sure that that our first responders are protected, and that we have staggered shifts, and we have different protocols in place, so that if someone does get sick, we can quickly isolate that individual and track anyone that might have interfaced with he or she. And so, because the last thing we want to do is take out a whole firehouse or take out the police station and have everybody quarantined. That creates a dilemma for being able to continue to respond to our residents. Then the other item that keeps me up at night is the basic. I mentioned basics, public safety, and just food. I mean, a lot of people. I mean, a lot of us are blessed that we're going to get through this and we're going to be okay. But there are a number of our residents that are not in that situation, that are out of jobs, that may not have money to pay for food, and so that's something that we're really trying to watch out for and to monitor, and to work with Metro Services to make sure that we're not having people in our community that are hungry.
Yeah, and that's why it's so fantastic that we've had such a great relationship with Metro Crest Services and everything that they've been doing. And I know Chief Parker's been very involved in communicating with them to help people with assistance. And we're thankful for the school district for the meals that they're providing and the way they're engaging our community. And it's not just the kids; like, they're helping to feed families, and they're helping kids that don't even go to their school. If they need a meal, they're still providing. And I think it's so great to see the way that not only Texans come together, but especially the people in our community come together to help those that are most in need. And I kind of, as you talk about the getting back to the basics, I feel like this whole period has kind of been kind of like a great reset. We're getting back to things that we used to take for granted and not do. Community members are being part of a community again. They're communicating on different levels and talking and looking out for one another. But we're also trying to reimagine how we're going to go forward, where home life has become important again. It's it's interesting to see, because it's hard to watch. We're seeing a lot of small and local businesses struggle. We're seeing a lot of families that are still struggling, but it's just great to see the way that our community organizations and community members have come together to support the nonprofits, and the way the city's helping support some of those nonprofits to bridge the gap and make sure that everyone's taken care of that's vulnerable. And when you talk about the hardships, we talk about money, and it impacts businesses, it impacts families, but it also impacts our city. And so when we're thinking about the budget and where we are now, and where we're going in the future, and what those impacts might look like, what do you see right now as our greatest challenges? As hotels aren't driving the revenue that they once were, and sales tax is probably going down, but are we fortunate that most property tax was paid fourth quarter last year, first quarter this year, that it kind of helped us out in the front end? Or what are you seeing as our challenges?
Yeah, obviously, finances as a whole is a huge concern at this time. I will tell you that if there was ever a good time for us to be hit with a crisis, this was it. Because I mean, the Texas economy, the North Texas economy and the Farmers Branch economy were at the highest levels that I've seen them in my tenure in Farmers Branch going into this.
Yeah.
The city of Farmers Branch also had some of the strongest fund balances we've ever had going into this. And so that has been a huge advantage to us. In terms of the budget and challenges, as you mentioned, property taxes is the largest component of our general fund revenue, and 97% of that was paid as of the end of January, which that's ordinarily when property taxes are due. So that's money already in the bank. The next largest revenue source is sales tax. That represents about 27% of the budget. And we're watching that strongly. That's reported kind of 2 months in arrears. So we just got the figures, the March numbers that we just booked are actually from February sales, and that's showing about a 10% reduction. But that's as of February, and March is when the big hit's going to happen. So we're going to be watching that closely when that information comes out. We take in roughly about $1.4 million a month in sales tax revenues, and a 10% decrease, for example, would be $140,000. One of the things to be that most residents may not realize is that our sales tax, the vast majority of it, does not come from traditional brick and mortar like a Best Buy or a Dollar General. It comes from, actually, we looked at, say, the top 75 biggest taxpayers, our sales taxpayers, that represent 70% of our sales tax. Those are more business to business type entities that provide services that tend to be somewhat resistant to business cycles, and so that's going to be very helpful. Obviously, if this lasts more than a few months and goes into, if it lasts longer than that, which hopefully it will not, that's going to be a different conversation. But if there was ever a mix of sales taxpayers that you'd want to have, this would be the mix, because it's less resistant to those cycles. So we're in terms of the general fund, we're in good shape on revenues and expenditures. We, as I've mentioned to you, Mayor, and the council, we immediately put once the scope of this crisis became apparent, we put a freeze on hiring. There were about 50 open positions, and we unfortunately had to furlough a number of all of our lifeguards and some historic park staff and our school crossing guards. Just those are positions that it looked like there was not going to be a need, at least for the next 2 to 3 months, and so we furloughed them. But they'll have the first dibs at the jobs when and if they come back open. The one concern you asked about the budget originally, the one main concern on the budgets can be on the hotel motel side.
Yeah.
Our hotels are empty.
Yeah.
And I read today that 80% of the hotels in the United States are vacant right now. That strongly impacts hotel motel revenues, obviously. And so, but thankfully we have no debt associated with the hotel motel fund. So any projects that we have in the hotel motel fund, we may have to defer a little bit, but that's not going to be devastating. Water and sewer fund, that's still going fine. We have no debt in the water and sewer fund. In fact, for the past 30 years, we've not had any debt in the water and sewer fund. We're a cash basis system, and a pay-as-you-go system in the water and sewer fund, which is unlike most of the cities around us. And so that's helpful. And talking about debt, we have really low debt on the general fund side. So again, I think we're well positioned. There's no guarantees, but I don't see us being at risk in our finances at this point.
Well, one of the, on the bright spot of the hotels, it's good to see some of them open their doors for first responders and our frontline workers, the medical care workers and hospital workers that need a place to stay because they're, fearful of potentially bringing the virus home to their family. And so seeing so many open their doors, not only in Farmers Branch, but in the region, I think has been tremendous. But when you talk about the challenges in the hotel motel fund, I think we're also what kind of expenses are being offset because we're not having the same number of events and some of the other things that we're doing, and there might be some projects that we can delay that normally comes out of that fund in regards to tourism, the historical park, and some other things. But what about? I mean, what do you see there, and especially if you look at the rec center and some of our other facilities, to where revenues aren't as high. They're not going to be as high as they were last year and trending in the same direction, which the team there's done a phenomenal job increasing revenues at a lot of our facilities from outside sources. What expenses have we also been able to cut to offset some of that? But I do want to give a shout out to you and your team just quickly for reallocating staff and finding work for these people to do that continue to move our city forward in terms of our public utility works and repairing infrastructure and critical need items, but also the way we moved our parks and rec staff to be more present in the community at our parks in areas of interest to remind people to socially distant and do some of those other things. But do you also see that as more people are staying home right now, and it's kind of a catch 22, but I would assume with people being home more, they're also using more water and sewer and other stuff, which is that a burden we might see for our residents in the coming months and through this next budget cycle?
Yeah, well, in terms of, I mentioned that we put a freeze on the hiring of those 50 positions. A lot of people might think, okay, with the city facilities closed, that there are employees that aren't needed. And what, as you mentioned, with now everybody at home, everybody is quite frankly is utilizing our services to a high degree. And so, in terms of folks calling for code enforcement or calling for, they may have seen people that aren't socially distancing themselves, and we need to send someone out to remind folks to socially distance themselves. In terms of police and fire, in terms of, we're still doing, since residential and commercial construction still are allowed to go on, we're still having permitting and planning that are moving forward. So virtually every function, and certainly garbage collection. I mean, this week was a huge bulk. It was probably the biggest bulk trash pickup we've ever had. And a shout out to the green grabber guys, and they have been out working 13-hour days all week into the nighttime. And it's because everybody's at home and everybody is looking for things to do.
Yeah.
And so guess what? Cleaning house. And so we're having the average set out rate is about 50%, meaning roughly 50% of each neighborhood are putting things out on their curb for bulk pickup. And so that's been a huge thing. So, folks are at home, folks are requesting services. Even our library, they're getting calls for different things. We're having a huge increase in the number of people that are downloading books. And as you mentioned, we've reallocated parks employees to go out and help monitor parks and make sure that people are being safe and being healthy. And so we're very active across the board throughout the city, and trying to provide services to our residents to the best of our ability, and to also be adaptable to the situation as it goes along. One thing, as you know, at the Branch Connection, even though the Branch Connection is closed, there's certainly a need to feed folks. And so we've in terms of, in addition to just the breakfast, we've moved to having weekly lunches where we hand out lunches at the Branch Connection, and that's been a very popular activity. And so, and also helping Metricus Services during this time, they've needed volunteers, and so we've allocated some part timers to help them in efforts to serve our residents. So we're doing as best we can with the staff we've got. Also mindful of that we need to be watching our expenditures because we don't know what the future holds, and so we're trying to do our best to, in terms of major projects that are discretionary, they've been put on hold. I've asked all departments that have discretionary large expenditures that if we can put them on hold, we should. And so we're trying to be responsible with the taxpayers' dollars, and I think we're doing a good job, and still being able to maintain the service levels that our residents have become accustomed to and strongly want to continue. And so that's our effort. Is I think if you ask the average resident, they would tell you that they don't really see a difference in services that we're delivering, even though the world has turned upside down for us. And so that's a mark of the caliber of the adaptability of staff and being able to kind of move with the punches.
Yeah, and that's been a true bright spot. Just seeing some of that, the way they've handled stuff at the branch connection, but also the way the Parks and Rec staff have tried to be creative and reaching out to community in a different way to just kind of support, let them know that we're there and we're still serving Farmers Branch the best we can. But not everything should be about the the challenges. What do you see as some of the opportunities right now?
Well, the opportunities are a couple opportunities. First, ultimately, the property values for next year that will translate into a property bill for next year are based on values as of January 1st, and things have changed since January 1st. So that may there may be some changes from the governor on that. But a bright spot is that even if we were to carry forward the same values we had this current year for next, the new construction activity that we've had, and this city has had a huge amount of new construction since the beginning of the fiscal year, that's value that we would continue to get above and beyond the current value. And so that will be a revenue increase regardless. And so that's an opportunity. The second opportunity, and I kind of go back to the sales tax, is when you've got such a high percentage of your sales tax payers in the business to business category, the resilience there is pretty good. And so I see that as an opportunity that if sales tax does go down a little bit, I think it will recover quite rapidly. The other opportunity is even with the downturn, we've had at least one tenant was kind of blended a little bit with the economy was still good, but then the virus became more evident. But the relocation of Tenant Healthcare to Farmers Branch, that's a Fortune 200 company, and most recently Trinity Industries coming from Dallas. Both those came from Dallas. Those are huge companies, and Tenant just announced last week. And so to have the endorsement of two companies to come to Farmers Branch with relatively little in the way of incentives indicates to me that the 80%, as you know, 80% of our values is from corporations. That the business community has a lot of strong feelings that Farmers Branch is the place to be in the Metroplex, and so that endorsement is important, and I think that's an opportunity. And I know that we have a lot of future hopes and desires and dreams for both our east side as well as around the station area. And at this point, they may be a little bit delayed, but I still see those moving forward in the very near future in a very good way.
I think that's also tremendous, and yeah, definitely a shout out to Tenant and Trinity, to come here during these times. I mean, you look at the number of jobs that are being added because of that. It's over 2,500 jobs here in this region, which is absolutely phenomenal, and so many opportunities for people to not only seek new opportunities here within the community, but also come to our community and realize the changes that are happening in some of these other areas and reimagine where they're going to start spending some more time. And hopefully it's in these areas we're redeveloping. But the true benefit to that, which I think you touched on, is, having International Plaza, more leased up. You look at Guidestone coming in and taking 5-6 floors at the old Oxy Tower. You realize that our office buildings through DCAT are typically valued on an income kind of basis, and having them full with tenants like that truly add to the value, which speaks to our commercial sector being able to lift us up during this time, so that hopefully it doesn't seem so dire as our budgeting needs as we're projecting out for next year and where we need to be to kind of not only help residents out, but help our business community, but still maintain the same level of service that we require, not only through our police and fire, but through our city and our amenities as well. So that's been great. But during, as you noted, you've been here 30 years, right? So you've seen some stuff, such as the S&L crash, 9/11, and the recession that came from that, but then also the Great Recession. You look at two of those, financial by nature and policy driven, but then one that was kind of an existential threat. How do you compare this and what we're seeing to some of those previous recessions, and what might be different and what might be a bright spot, even though it does look a little dark?
Yeah. Well, all of uh, those different those are some very different economic hits that we saw and that we recovered from. And thankfully, I know staff and I know I learned a little bit from each one of those, and I think it's helped to get for us to be able to react to what we're seeing now. The main difference with those two examples and now is that uh, well, 9/11 was just a shock to the system, but even in 2001, the economy in Texas, in North Texas specifically, and in Farmers Ranch was not as strong as it is now. As I mentioned earlier, this is the strongest going into this crisis. It's the strongest economy I've seen, and we are positioned financially better than we've ever been. So the main difference is that we are better prepared for it financially, and the economy around us is better prepared financially. So that you know we kind of have a double whammy with the oil. The oil price is kind of collapsing, but at some point that's going to turn around. And the dynamics of Texas being a very entrepreneurial driven state, a low tax state, those are fundamentals that aren't going away, regardless of what's going on with the virus. And so, at some point, we're going to get through this, and this virus is going to be somehow wiped out. I can't tell you how, but it will. And when it is, then people are going to continue going, "Hey, Texas is the place to be," and the Metroplex specifically is a great place to be. So I see the turnaround uh, in the economy for our area. We're probably looking at a turnaround in the next, hopefully, year and a half to 2 years. If not, I would love it if it was earlier. I'm being conservative there, but I think the turnaround is going to be a lot more rapid than in the past. Additionally, when I mentioned about learning from each of those, one thing I learned was that after after 2008, after the economic dip there, which lasted for us a number of years, we had to go through a process of eliminating 100 full-time positions. That was 1/3 of the non-public safety staff in Farmers Branch. Public safety we didn't touch. Um, that's not an easy thing to do. Whether you're a government or a private company, that's not an easy thing to do. So one thing that we really worked on doing is making sure that, because every time a cycle it goes down, it goes ultimately back up, and so what we really worked and strategized on is, okay, when development returns, which it has the past 2 years, we would look at using contract work to supplement our existing staff to help with additional plan reviews and inspections. When we had east and west side development, that we used contract work for mowing to supplement our park maintenance employees. We'd already outsourced residential sanitation in the library, but through all of those different methods of using contractors and using outsourcing, our full-time employee base has been the same as it was back in 2008. Actually, I take that back. Back when we eliminated those 100 positions, it's not ever gone back up. It's stayed flat that whole time. And so what that means is that when the economy's gone back down, like it has recently, we can just shed the contracts, in which we have. And so we don't have to necessarily lay off a huge percentage of our employees, because we've always been lean and mean. And so that's kind of the takeaway I had. And back to your original question of, how is it different? Two things: we're financially in a better position than we ever have been going into it, and second, our cost structure was has been set up in a way that it can be very flexible and very adaptable to very quickly shed a lot of cost without being disruptive to the services that we provide our residents. And so that's always important. And it's, I think if over the past 10 to 20 years, if you ask a resident, did they ever really see a dip in services during any of those financial crises that you mentioned? I think they're going to go, hey, it's been pretty much the same ever since. We get great services in Farmers Branch. We continue to get great services, and there's really not been a bump. And to me, that's a mark of success, because I'd rather, my attitude about government is people shouldn't have to think about it,
Yeah.
that they should just go out and live their lives and be happy people and just see that their garbage has been picked up on time, that the streets don't have potholes, that if they call 911, someone is there within 4 minutes or less without ever having to think about government. And so that's the mark of success to me.
Yeah, and I feel 85% of people probably live that way every day, and it's good that we've been able to maintain that. And, I think about 2007, 2008, and for me, it's kind of still have some nightmares about it, because that's right when I was coming out of school. So great time to try to get a job. Fortunate that I did have one, but we had 10 people, cut it to 2. And I'm sitting there doing the job of 5 other people. So, I know that in the hard times, people can become more efficient, but we can all push through to brighter days. So it's good to see that you're seeing some opportunity from this. But what does the other side look like to you?
I think the other side, a lot of the exciting things that we've planned in terms of some, major master planning development of the station area, in terms of improvements to the look of the I-35 corridor, in terms of some improvements to the east side area, in terms of the walkability of the whole city, and trails. Those are all things that are still going to continue. They may be delayed a little bit from just this blip, but the other side is that within the next, again, year and a half to 2 years, that we should be back on pace to continue some of these new things. The other side is, we have a restaurant park that's about to open. That's not going to be a year and a half. That's going to be, it may be, restaurants are obviously hurting right now because they're closed. But our restaurant partners that are interested in the restaurant park at Mustang Station, they still have a commitment to that project. Cox Farms, if there was ever a time for a business to open, it would be a grocery store during this crisis, because they're doing okay, and it was a soft opening, and they're doing well. And so a lot of the projects that we kind of have that were already kind of teed up are still going to continue. They may be delayed a month or 2, but in terms of the restaurant park, in terms of some of the development that we have going on the west side, they're still going to continue forward. It may just be a little bit slower than we had originally planned. So
Yeah.
the other side, I think, is bright, and I'm very much an optimist on that. And what, quite frankly, in some areas, you sometimes you look for opportunities when the markets are down, and in terms of residential revitalization, some housing pricing becomes more attractive for the city to take advantage of that and buy property to help revitalize parts of the city. In terms of construction costs, we're already seeing in some areas where we're getting better deals on construction costs. And so we try and watch for those opportunities and take advantage of them as we can.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like you said, Cox Farms is open. I've been grateful to be able to walk, 200 yards right to their front door and grab my groceries. And it's been a wonderful experience, and something definitely everyone in the community should check out. But, also urging everyone to please support your local restaurants and businesses. They greatly need us during this time. And we have some wonderful restaurants making amazing food that I try to dine out at least once a day to just kind of do my part. And so just thankful for everyone else that's participating in that as well. But to kind of wind this down, 3 rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
Mr. Cox. When you have a rare moment to yourself, how do you detach, and what's your favorite distraction? Just kind of real quick.
Yeah, that's easy. I've got a lake house in East Texas, and going to the lake house, waking up every morning with a cup of coffee in my hand,
Oh, there it is. Right.
and watching the sunrise and the world become alive. That is my go-to place. I'm a very happy person at that point.
That's amazing. What are you most proud of right now during this time?
I'm most proud of the fact that we've got a staff that has again, the world is turned upside down. The staff is they're out of the office. They have to wear masks. Uh, and they've adapted to it in a rapid pace, and they're out there and delivering services. That's the adaptability of staff, certainly the support of council, and quite frankly, the willingness of the vast majority of our residents are out there caring, helping each other. And when I first became city manager, one of the things that I was hoping to achieve is putting neighbors back into neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of happening because people are when they're home all day long and with nothing to do for the most part, they come out and they start being neighborly again, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's great. So, final one, in 3 words or less, describe what means the most to you right now.
I would say I'll give you 2 words: ethics and integrity. Ethics and integrity are probably the top two of my list, and that's really what I go by.
Those are great. I love them. I'd probably add for a third word, compassion, at least for me. Just helping people out. But can't thank you enough for taking the time to join me, have a conversation about our city, for your leadership, the way you're allowing our teams to still work, find creative ways to serve and provide for our community and our residents and our businesses. And so just want to thank you, but also just want to thank everyone for watching, Mornings with the Mayor. I'm Robert Dye. If you like the show, check out our next episode. We'll be having a conversation with hopefully Fire Chief Steve Parker. And so until then, stay safe, stay home, stay positive, and we'll see y'all soon. Thanks.